You're listening to the Oklahoma On Stage podcast. We're glad you've joined us. We can be found on most platforms, as well as Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. If you have any comments or questions, we'd love to hear them. So drop us an email at oklahomaonstage@gmail.com or use the comment form on our website, which is oklahomaonstage.org. If you like the podcast, please share it with someone. And now, sit back and enjoy another great episode.
Welcome back, everybody, to Oklahoma On Stage. As always, I'm Tim, your host. You ever have those moments where you meet someone and immediately you connect? Today's guest is just that way. We met just about a year ago, and immediately we were friends. And I love that. We had a great connection right off the bat, and I'm so glad to call her my friend. Today's guest lives at the intersection of page and stage, protest and play in Oklahoma and the Pacific Northwest. She's a Palestinian-American writer whose work has appeared in places like Audi Magazine, Los Angeles Review, a PhD candidate in creative writing at Oklahoma State University, an English instructor, a community theater storyteller, and, because that's not enough, a competitive cosplayer who unwinds with knitting and baking. You might have seen her as Viola in Twelfth Night or the Grand Duchess in Just Assassins. But today, we get to meet the artists behind those roles. In this episode, we're diving into the worlds of identity, storytelling, and theater. Oklahoma On Stage family, please join me in welcoming Kat Abdallah to the podcast.
Nice. Oh, I'm beaming. That was really sweet. I wasn't expecting you to say all that.
Yeah, that's what I do. That's what I do.
Thank you.
Welcome. We're so glad to have you, sis. I appreciate this.
I'm so excited.
So we're going to go all the way back to the beginning. And how did you get started in theater?
I mean, if we want to go all the way back to the very beginning, my first, I don't know if you'd call it a role, but I was the star of Bethlehem in a Christmas pageant when I was 3 years old. So I guess I was destined to be a star, literally from the beginning. In early elementary school, my mom put me in drama classes. I think she knew that I wanted a lot of attention, and she was just one person. So my first drama class was first grade. And I was hooked on it immediately. This idea of dressing up and saying things from another person's perspective. So I stuck with it, and I was completely hooked on it. I took a little mental health break in undergrad. And when I got into grad school, this was right after COVID. And I didn't remember how to be a person. I had been at home. My grandma had gotten sick. So I was really a homebody for years. And you know me, I'm very extroverted. So I'm not built to be a homebody. So it was the first year of my master's program. It was the second month of my first year. And I thought, I need to leave the house. I need a commitment that is going to force me to leave the house every single day. If I sign up for a class, I can just skip it. I need somebody to be counting on me to show up every day. And I remembered how much fun I had had in high school and middle school being in theater. So I went to an audition and I didn't get it. It was I've always liked weird shows. And the show was called Scarecrow for Hire, and it was a 1920s Wizard of Oz. And I thought it was such a cool idea. The play had been commissioned specifically because somebody had seen a skit in an improv show of a 1920s Wizard of Oz. And I thought it was such a cool idea. I went and auditioned, and the director gave me feedback after the audition. He said, "You did great, but you were so quiet." And you know me, I'm not usually like that. So I thought, well, I'm just going to go audition for things to get practice, since apparently I really don't know how to be a person anymore if people think I'm quiet. So I looked up auditions nearby, and the next audition was later that week, and it was As You Like It. And I rolled in just thinking, I'm just going to get practice. I'm just going to get practice. It's just audition practice. They're not going to cast me. And I was so nervous. I was 22 and made my mom drive me because I was so nervous. And I got out of the audition and got into the car, and I said they hated me. And 2 days later, they called and they had cast me in the ensemble. And I was so excited. I had gotten so hooked on suddenly having a project and having a reason to leave my house that wasn't work, that it's just been project after project after project ever since. That was 2021, As You Like It, and now here we are with The Tempest. I feel like I've really found my home in Shakespeare.
Very cool. So Pacific Northwest, whereabouts?
So my parents live like 30-ish miles north of Seattle.
Okay.
We live in Snohomish County. My master's degree was in Bellingham, so that was 2 counties north of that. But we were really close to the freeway, so easy access to Seattle Theater, easy access to Mount Vernon Bellingham Theater. So I got to really play along the I-5 corridor and do some stuff outdoors in the woods, do some stuff at Seattle Center. So I feel like I got to do kind of the urban indie thing and then also the outdoor Shakespeare thing. I feel like I got to, in the Pacific Northwest, really experiment with different kinds of theater settings.
So what brought you to Oklahoma?
OSU offered me a free PhD, and I figured I should take it.
And why not? You don't hear the word free very often in this world, especially at that level.
Yeah.
So, absolutely. So what was it like making that transition from Seattle, Washington to Stillwater, Oklahoma?
I've really missed the big city. I've missed Seattle has, I think, we were talking about this earlier. I think Seattle, it's easier to just start a theater project. Like there's the Theater Puget Sound Studios that anybody can just go rent as a performance space, and they have multiple sizes of performance spaces. So a lot of people will just say, hey, let's all get together and be friends and put on a show just for fun. And I here there was much more of a tradition to things and tradition to the theater, and you feel like you're joining a theater's legacy here. So back in Seattle, I was doing like a lot of new works and really indie experimental things. And here I've gotten to do like full-blown musicals, which was not something that I was doing back home. Not to say that people don't do that back in Washington, but I think there's more of a pressure just because of the culture of Seattle to resist tradition. So I've really enjoyed doing more, I don't want to say traditional theater, but like people weren't putting on Beauty and the Beast back home, and I got to be in Beauty and the Beast here. So I got to do some of the like bigger Disney-esque golden age stuff here that I wanted to do, but that wasn't really catching fire back home.
And now we're starting to see some of that indie work making its way here to Oklahoma. Starting to see it broaden in certain areas, little fires catching all over the place. And so that's kind of, maybe that was part of your influence coming here. So you've performed in a lot of different stuff. You said Shakespeare has become kind of your comfort zone, if you will.
I think so, yeah.
So you mentioned that a couple of your favorite roles were Viola, Twelfth Night.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, you're the Grand Duchess recently in The Just Assassins.
Oh, I loved Just Assassins.
It was a great show, great story. So what do you look for in a character?
Every time I finish a show, I kind of set a new intention for myself. So, like, all the way back during the As You Like It days, I just wanted to get cast. It had been years since I'd been in theater. So I got an ensemble role. I think I was Dennis, and then one of the like men following the Duke in the forest. And then at the very end, I was the Goddess of Marriage, the like 3 smaller roles. And then after that, I was cast as Bardolph in Henry V. So I had just one character to focus on. And I was setting intentions of, okay, I want just one character to focus on. I really want a lead. And right after that, it was Viola, which was a dream role. I loved being Viola so much. I miss that show every day. After that, I thought, I'd really like to get paid. I really just want to get paid. I also wanted to try the virtual theater thing. I sit on the board for a hybrid theater company back in Seattle. So they do live shows in Seattle and then virtual shows. I got to write a 2020 Great Gatsby for them last year, which was a lot of fun. So that was another goal that I had. I wanted to try something virtual. I wanted to try stage managing, so I stage managed something. I wanted to get cast in a musical, so I took an ensemble role in a musical. I tried to do something new and different every time. So most recently, my last time on stage was in The Just Assassins with the Grand Duchess, and I really was compelled by her arc. That's a character with one scene in a very dialogue-heavy show, but her scene is very significant. And I loved the challenge of that, of telling a person's life story in one scene. And it was also a straight dramatic role. And usually I get cast in comedic roles. So I really loved the challenge of, I want to do something that's just dramatic. And that had been a goal that I had set for myself after The Wicked Witch in Wizard of Oz. Because with that role, I wanted to be a chaos gremlin. And after that, I wanted something that was very serious, that felt more like a real person. And that role was in particular very intimidating because she was real and I had to research her life. I had to research, like, how do Russian Orthodox nuns cross themselves? I had to practice a Russian accent. So in a character, I'm looking for, what is a new challenge? What is something I have not done before that now I'm going to force myself to do and do well?
Very cool. Yeah, I love the research aspect. I've always found it interesting when you do a real person that what I've told people in shows that I've directed is that, some of these roles, it was real to the writer when they put it together, but it's all fiction. They made the character. It was real to them. But when you shift over to, when I take it myself, roles like The Diary of Anne Frank or The Miracle Worker, those were real people. You can go and look them up and you can research and study them. But then when people don't, it's almost like they're missing something. When they try, it's one thing to make something your own, but to not give nod to the realistic aspect of it. I think that's great that you actually take the time to research and build the character around who they really were.
And that was a specific challenge. I had played real people before. I mean, Bardolph, Henry V is one of the histories, but Bardolph is like a cartoon version of the people Henry V was hanging out with. So I did not treat that as playing a real character. I mean, I was a 22-year-old woman playing a 50-year-old man. I wasn't taking that super seriously.
Sure.
And then prior to The Just Assassins with Little Shop of Productions, we had done The Yellow Boat, which is written by David Sarr about the life and death of his son. So I was also playing real people, but I was in the Greek chorus. So I was playing figures and not a full fleshed out, like his mom, for example.
Yeah.
You get more of a sense of her as a person, or his dad, or even Benjamin in that show. So The Just Assassins, I wasn't just playing a figure, like a teacher figure or a child figure. It was this woman who had a very well-documented life, who was of deep historical significance, who had been through a tragedy, and I felt very compelled to take care of her in ways that I didn't feel with Bardolph, for example.
Sure.
So that role is one of my favorites, and I think will be for the rest of my life.
So you talk about, from comedic roles to The Wicked Witch to, again, the Duchess. How do you prepare for your roles? What is your process?
I really care about bonding with my actors. So back when I was Bardolph, the gal playing Corporal Nin, it was really funny. Pistol, Nin, and Bardolph, the three of us were gals in our 20s playing middle-aged men. It was a really, really funny cast. But we made a point of like hanging out. We were like, we are going to be friends and we're going to bond and we are going to make sure that we have chemistry off stage so we are comfortable and safe with each other on stage. I really value chemistry that is authentic, built on actual trust with my scene partners. So that to me is a big part of the preparation, the bonding. Like in It's a Wonderful Life with Kyle as Mr. Martini and myself as Mrs. Martini, he and I had gotten really close during Much Ado About Nothing. So we had a lot of trust with each other to improvise and to make up scenes during performances.
Yes, you did.
We had we had that trust in each other based on our actual friendship. So I think that's the most important part for me. I mean, what's the point in making art if you're not making art among people you care about?
The two things that you said there that I really love more than anything else, authenticity, and trust. I think those are two things that I say this a lot, that as actors, whatever level you're looking at, actors, directors, writers, our number one job is to tell stories. And if you can't tell the story authentically, with realism, making it real. If you get up on stage and you're just faking it, the audience is going to know you're faking it.
Yeah.
They're going to feel it. And so if you're not going to get up there and be real and authentic with it, why bother? And so I love that you brought that out, and the trust factor. I don't think you can have the authenticity or the realism unless you have the trust amongst each other. And so I commend you for that.
Thank you.
So, quick question: comedy or drama? Where do you feel most at home?
Comedy. I want to be the serious actor that thrives in drama, but I mean, I auditioned for Romeo and Juliet, and I thought that I was real close to getting Romeo because I was reading all of the lines like it was a comedy. The person they cast as Romeo was playing it straight drama.
Wow.
And I thought, well, of course, they didn't pick me. I don't take anything seriously. I mean, I do, but when it comes to finding moments of drama and finding moments of comedy, I don't think the drama of a show matters unless the audience cares about the character. And I think a big part of how I connect with characters is I go, what makes them fun, right? If you're having fun with a character, you're really going to care if something bad happens to them.
Sure.
Which I think I'm referencing Bardolph a lot from Henry V. Bardolph was a character who dies. And Bardolph is comic relief in the first half of that show, and then Bardolph dies, and the show isn't funny anymore. The first half of Henry V is comedy, and then it's war and blood and guts. And I think what I really took away from that is I want the audience to be invested in my character and my character's arc and my character as a person. And Bardolph is executed for stealing from a church. So Bardolph is not a morally great person, but I'd like to think the audience cared about Bardolph because they were having fun with Bardolph. So I think I have an easier time connecting with audiences through comedy, but I love moments of drama. And my favorite scene in Henry V was the scene where I die as Bardolph. So
dying on stage is fun. It just is.
They didn't let me die on stage. Bardolph was supposed to die by hanging. And I said, can we do this on stage? And they said, we don't have the insurance for that. But I think I find an easier time connecting with comedy. Theater's a bit of an escape, right? And the world is a very serious place a lot of the time, and I like having a safe space to just be a silly goose.
Sure.
Yeah.
Why not? So transitioning just a little bit to your writing, when did you find out that writing was a passion for you?
So a lot of that comes from my heritage. I was an English major for undergrad, and I was getting close to graduation, and I thought, I'm going to apply to grad school. That was kind of on a whim. I make a lot of my most serious life decisions on a whim, and I was looking up English grad programs, and I wasn't connecting with lit programs or linguistics programs. But what I was connecting with were options in creative writing, and I thought, I'm going to give this a try. I think we talk about in theater telling stories that matter, and you talk about the goal of the podcast. These guests on your podcast, their stories matter. For me, talking about heritage, my grandmother couldn't read. My grandmother was entirely illiterate. And if we watch what's happening in Gaza right now, there are family records that are destroyed. There are last names that no longer exist in Gaza. Like I have a friend, her last name is not in any records found in the current population of Gaza. So she's the last of her family name. So I feel a sense of urgency with my writing to tell relevant stories and get things on paper. One of my personal heroes is Maxine Hong Kingston, the author of Woman Warrior, and she writes that she writes to save people and things from oblivion. And I think that's also what I try to do with Shakespeare. I think Shakespeare can very quickly become not irrelevant, but kind of set aside. I know a lot of actors who don't want to touch Shakespeare, and I understand why. I think looking for what is universal, what's universal in my story that's going to help somebody else, what's universal in my grandma's story and what that represents about the world right now. What's universal in Shakespeare, and why does that still connect with people today? I like looking for those moments of connection in my writing and in theater, and putting that out into the universe to find whoever needs it.
Okay. So you in your information that you've sent to me, you used the phrase creative nonfiction. Tell me about that.
That's the technical term. I don't know that I love it. Where I find my sweet spot in my writing is in speculative nonfiction. So like, I write a lot about my family's history. I write kind of two things. I write adaptations of classic works and then my family history. So I'll write like a 2020s Great Gatsby that is live streamed from Zoom, or I'll write about my grandmother's battle with dementia before she died. And there's not much of an in-between for me. As far as creative nonfiction goes, I care about telling the truth. Toni Morrison said in one of her craft essays that I don't remember the title of off the top of my head, she said that she dislikes the terms fiction and nonfiction. She's concerned with telling the truth. And you can find the truth in Beloved or in Stula or in The Bluest Eye. And I'm concerned with telling the truth. And I bill my work as creative nonfiction because there's a canonized history of Palestine and of Gaza and of Arab immigrants to the United States. There's a canonized history, but a lot of that is framed by colonialism and framed by a dominant narrative, especially post 9/11. Like I was 2 years old in 2001, so I'm very much a child of revision of Arab narratives in the United States. And Arabs have been in the U.S. since the 1800s, and actually the first Arabs to the U.S. were slaves. And that's a history that not a lot of people know. So in an attempt to give weight to what I'm saying, I bill my work as creative nonfiction so people know I'm telling the truth of my family's story and of my heritage to the best of my ability. It's true and you can trust it. Memory is also not perfect, and we can get into genre and all of the different things I wrote on my most recent qualifying exam. But I think the creativity comes into it because it's my lens and it's my memory and it's my style of telling it. So it's truth and it's my truth. And I'm going to take ownership of it in that way and tell it in a way that I hope is compelling, that I hope is creative, that I hope doesn't feel like a textbook.
Well, very cool. I mean, and I think for all of us, regardless, as we're talking about storytelling and everything, it's all from our own perspective. I mean,
Mhm.
we can't write, act, or speak from someone else's perspective because
Mhm.
we don't know their perspective.
Mhm.
I mean, I couldn't get up on stage and portray a a spot on Palestinian individual because I know nothing about being a Palestinian individual. And
I
so
certainly wasn't a spot on Russian Duchess.
exactly. And so, there's all of those things. And so, yes, there are, as you said, there are similarities, there are perspectives, and there are universal commonalities in all of us. But there are different perspectives from that as well.
Mhm.
So I like that you're embracing that. Um, you've been published in some of your works. So what are some of the publications that you're most proud of?
The one you referenced on Audi Magazine, that was a special issue in response to October of 2023. That was a Solidarity with Gaza issue, and I was really grateful to be included in that special issue. The poem featured there that I wrote was called A Farm in Gaza, and it was a brief poem about my grandmother's entire life, from Nakba to Naksa to immigration. So the violence that she experienced and the ways our family overcame poverty to come to the US. I really like the Los Angeles Review piece. That was my first ever publication. So I was really surprised that it was picked up. It was a short story imagined around the Met Gala. So that was my first course in creative writing in my master's degree, and it was autobiographical fiction. And we talked about the layers spectrum of autobiographical fiction, from like Stephen King writing what is technically autobiographical fiction because it's set in his hometown, and that's the autobiographical aspect, to people who write their life stories and change all the names and publish it as fiction. So that was the first time I had really played with autobiographical fiction. So I imagined myself being at the Met Gala in a piece called Camp for the Los Angeles Review. It's a very dialogue heavy piece that needed some revision when it was initially published, but I have a deep fondness for that being my first publication.
Of course.
One of my other favorite works, my dear friend Saba Karamati is the poetry editor for Sundog Lit. And she published a piece that I wrote called Colors of a Watermelon about anti-Arab hatred and anti-Palestine hate. A brief side note, Colors of a Watermelon, the Palestinian flag is not legally displayed in parts of the world, but conveniently, the same colors are depicted in a watermelon. So if you see a watermelon just out in the world somewhere, that might be a Palestinian flag in disguise. So those are some of my favorites. I've written a couple of one acts. I wrote a one act for Rainy Day Artistic Collective. I sit on the board. That's the hybrid theater company that I referenced earlier. I wrote a really fun piece based on Cinderella at a library that my dear friend Ollie Phillips was in. He was Prince Charming, and I wrote a really icky Prince Charming for that play. And there was a part of the script where I just wrote, Ollie, make something up, and he did it to a T. I'll have to find you a link later and send it to you. And I have a fondness for the virtual 2020 Great Gatsby that I wrote. That was my first full-length play. And I like I said, I enjoy adaptation or personal history. And Great Gatsby, it felt very timely. It felt very timely to revisit Gatsby and what those characters might look like today.
Very cool. So how would you say that theater influences your writing voice?
For my master's degree, I wrote my thesis as a script, which looking back, I don't know that that was the smartest choice because scripts are harder to get published than traditional prose or poetry. But I definitely look at the way I write even real people in my life. I try to write with I try to write with an openness. And I try to give readers space for interpretation, something that I had been told by my mentors the first couple years, the first few semesters of my master's degree. I was told that I had like this iron grip around my writing, that I was begging readers to just read my way and to just understand things my way. And I was told, you need to let your readers interpret your work. So I think playing real people on stage, whether it's Silly Bardolph or the Grand Duchess, and realizing what interpretation of a character could look like kind of helped me free that grip from my writing. Because I'm writing family history, like I want everyone to love my mom. I want you to read a piece that I've written about my mom and think that my mom is the greatest because I think she's the greatest. And writing my thesis as a script, I think, gave me space to understand different actors might read this character of my mom differently. And that's okay. And I can loosen up and trust my readers a little bit and trust myself a little bit to leave some of that openness in.
And there's some vulnerability in there too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So flipping the script, how would you say that your writing influences your acting?
Ooh. I think I'm very tuned into like why this specific word or why is this comma there, right? Because editing my own work, revising my own work, all of those little things matter. So thinking from the playwright's perspective also, knowing that I try to be really precise as the playwright, what were they being precise about? And what do I need to look for? What does this hidden period or this M dash, what does that mean here? What secret do I get to share with the playwright now in how I'm going to interpret the mechanics of how?
So you're trying to spend just as much time getting inside the head of the playwright as you are trying to get inside of the head of the character.
And sometimes the translator too. Like the Just Assassins was a translated word. And there were moments where I thought, why is it worded like this? What happened with this translation from French to English? And I enjoy the layers of linguistic work that go into a performance in that way.
Very cool. So now we've transitioned into the teaching aspect. So we've made this evolution into adulthood, if you will. You're now a grown up, and so
am I
now? Well, okay. We always use that term loosely. So so you're teaching here at OSU.
Yes.
What brought you to teaching?
I wanted to be a teacher since elementary school. I loved books so much. And where I was like, I'm going to be an English teacher, I had the most fabulous 9th grade English teacher. Her name was Miss Platter. And she treated teaching like a performance. She would rearrange the desks to represent the books that we were reading. So like we had these straight, precise rows for a separate piece. We were sitting in a circle for Things Fall Apart to kind of capture the community within that book. And she would wear costumes, and like we read Romeo and Juliet, and she put on a masquerade party, and she divided the class into Capulets and Montagues, and she made us enter the classroom from separate doors so we would get a sense of that tension.
Wow.
And I loved the way she made books come to life, and she made writing come to life. And I was like, I'm going to do what she did ever since then. And that's still, I think, in a lot of ways what I aspired to be as a teacher is to make what we're reading really come alive. And she, I think, I credit so much of who I am now to her, in a large part because of the way she trained us with Shakespeare. I feel like Shakespeare is very intimidating and difficult to read, and so much of it just doesn't apply anymore linguistically, or like from a government perspective, there's things that don't translate. From a character gender role perspective, there's things that don't translate to now. And she really trained us into, here are all of the tools that you have, and here's why it matters that you get to the point of these characters and this dialogue and what they're saying. So later on, when I got into college and I was taking Shakespeare classes, and when I started performing Shakespeare, I felt like I had everything I needed to excel in what has now become my comfort zone of Shakespeare.
Very cool. So now, in the teaching realm, there's so many requirements from the academia side.
Oh, yeah.
You have to meet this and you have to dot this and cross this T and all of these things. How do you balance all of the academia requirements and curriculum and all that with creativity?
I think I think my research focus of creative writing and creative nonfiction lends itself to that more. Um, Research in our case is looking at craft and reading within our genre and then publishing our own creative works. So I have very intentionally chosen a path for myself that has creativity built into it. But I also I try to write about what I care about, which sounds so cliche, but from an academic perspective, I've presented at conferences on like poems that my friends have written. I'm a member of the Radius of Arab Writers, and a number of my friends in that group have their first books or second or third books out. And my secondary focus is contemporary literature, which with a focus on Palestinian diaspora. So I feel like I'm writing about things that I care about, and I'm lending my academic focus to things that really matter to me. I try to build motivation into my work because like I had said earlier, I got into theater because I needed a reason to leave my house every day. I need a reason to stay motivated in my work, a benchmark of this is the reward that I'm working towards, and it's a reward of something I already want to do. I don't know if that makes sense, this idea of building in motivation, but
Sure. I think it's great. So, from your classes, what do you hope that students take away from their time with you?
I hope my students feel empowered to express themselves. I have had students who have never written an essay before, or they're choosing career paths where that's not what they're going to be doing. And I want them to feel like writing an essay or writing a short story or writing a poem has allowed them to find something within themselves that they didn't know was there. In my early writing pedagogy training, my previous director, so the one back in Washington, my previous first year comp director would say writing is a meaning making activity. And we want our students to find in their brains things they didn't know were there until they wrote it down.
Mm.
And so I view writing as a practice of discovery. I know that I have found a lot of catharsis in journaling, and that's translated into a practice of writing personal essays, which then transitioned into writing oral history into memoir. So I want my students to find a practice in writing that helps them accomplish what they're seeking to accomplish, whether that's in their careers or in their self-discovery or in their self-development.
So, away from academia, away from the stage, you have certain ways that you call it relax, unwind,
Do I?
be creative. You said that you were involved with cosplay.
It's been a while. It's an expensive habit.
It is, it very much is, yes. And you said you did this competitively?
I did.
So kind of walk me through that a little bit.
Yeah, the cosplay scene in Seattle is very highly skilled. So I never placed in competition, but my mom works in a library. I had a weird foray into cosplay. My mother works in a library and she worked in community programming. And I was at a panel on representations of women in science fiction, fantasy, and comic books. The library had hosted a like mini Comic-Con, and my mom, because she was in charge of community programming for, I think, teens, it might have been kids at the time. She's had multiple roles in the library. But the library was hosting a mini Comic-Con, and she said, "Hey, I think you'd enjoy this panel. You should go." And the speaker at the panel, I wish I remembered her name because she was so instrumental into what I ended up becoming. She kept talking about this event called Geek Girl Con. And it was a smaller convention of focusing on women's voices in geek communities. So like women game developers, women scientists, women cosplayers, women writers. And I went to that convention. That was my first cosplay convention. They were really focused on accessibility and they were really focused on anti-elitism. So show up and compete with whatever you have. So I started competing in this really inclusive environment and I ended up working my way to a few other states. I competed in Chicago one time, Madison, Wisconsin one time, and Portland, Oregon one time. Again, I never placed in anything. But I wanted to make my way back into performance. This was in undergrad, and I had been taking my mental health break from theater, and really taking my mental health break from a lot of things. And I had missed that aspect of embodying a character. And you can't get rights to play Harley Quinn on stage. She doesn't exist in a theater script, right? Or another character, I was Mary Marvel from the Shazam franchise in another cosplay competition. So I found that cosplay was this window into performance that didn't require rights, that didn't require the entire production. It was you show up and you do your thing and you are the show. And that's what drew me into it. It's been a while again since I've competed because it's a real expensive habit. My mom actually called me the other day and she goes, I'm cleaning out the sewing room. Do you want anything? And I said, well, I don't know, but don't touch my stuff yet. So yeah, that one, it's been a while since grad school has eaten up a lot of my time, but I do plan on getting back to it eventually.
So what would you say are some of your favorite bills?
Ooh, I did a 1980s prom dress for Harley Quinn one time that I was really proud of. That was for Rose City Comic Con and I took that to competition. And my friend was Ivy, so we were Harley and Ivy walking around that day. I made a Ms. Marvel costume, Kamala Khan, and my friend was Carol Danvers, and we walked around Emerald City Comic Con like that. And this little girl came up to us with this just sweet, shy little expression on her face and asked us for a picture.
Aww.
So you get to be a superhero to like a little kid that's at a comic convention for the first time. And to her, you are the hero that day.
Yeah.
And I think there's this intimacy to cosplay and to being the hero for the day right up close to somebody that you don't get on stage. And I love that full immersion and full audience participation in that regard with cosplay.
Yeah. So outside of the cosplay, you also knit and bake?
I do.
So
I prop design sometimes too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where did the I'm guessing the knitting has come from family at some point?
Yes.
As you know, oftentimes that does. I think my wife does some crocheting. She picked up the idea from a grandmother or aunt. Yeah. I think my mom tried to pass down some and all of that. So, so the knitting, is the baking also come from a family history?
It's I just like to share things with people. So I like the intimacy of like a handmade present. So I like being able to say, here's a hat I knitted. I made it just for you and nobody else has one like it. And same with baking. I like feeding people and I like people enjoying something that I've produced. I call those my grandma hobbies. Baking I got more from my mom. She and I were fans of Great British Bake Off. And the knitting I got from my grandma. When I was 7 years old, she was like, you're going to learn how to do this. And I said, okay.
Wow. You were patient enough to do that?
There was some mom telling me you're going to do this for grandma's sake.
So is there an overlap between all of these? I mean, you talk about the cosplay, you know, the aspect of that, but some overlap between these creative aspects and theater?
I think like every theater kid, I have a hard time sitting still. So I like to keep my hands busy, and knitting is helpful when there's like a movie or an audiobook on. Same with baking. I like to multitask. I like to have multiple things to do, multiple projects to work on at the same time. And I think it's all part of that I just can't sit still thing.
So currently, the Oklahoma chapter of your life, um, what have you discovered in the Oklahoma theater scene?
I have discovered a lot of people who are going to make the show happen no matter what. No matter what. Like right now with Tempest, my Alonzo came up to me, Brittany Scheidegger, and she says, "Hey, do you want any help with costumes?" And normally I'm like, "No, I'll do it. I'll take care of it." But I just had a notion in my head of, maybe it's okay to delegate some things. And she costumed the whole show. I told her I'd love some help with the fairies, and she was like, "Okay, I'm gonna do everything." um, there's just this drive of we are gonna get this done. I've seen that over and over again at Town and Gown of this show is gonna come together, and we are gonna make this come together. The work calls are no joke. Like I remember my first work call for As You Like It back in the day in Washington. It was a few members of the cast and then like the technical director of the theater. And we got enough done for the day. Work calls here are no joke. Like the community turns out. Just friends of the theater, friends of cast members. People just show up because they want to make things happen. There's this deeper, I think, communal sense of work worth doing collectively.
I like that. And yeah, I agree. So you have recently developed a relationship with a theater company in Tulsa
Yay.
that you have now performed with multiple times, called Little Shop of Productions, which you've
Yes.
mentioned earlier.
Love them.
How did that relationship come about?
I was just scrolling through. We were getting ready to wrap on A Little Princess. And I thought, I don't have a project lined up. What am I going to do? And I saw auditions for The Yellow Boat, which was their first show ever. And I was very drawn to The Yellow Boat specifically because I'm a rare disease survivor. I had autoimmune hemolytic anemia as a very young child. And The Yellow Boat is about a young boy with a blood disease. And later, from a blood transfusion, he develops HIV, and that's the rest of the story. Very, very tragic story, but I was very, very drawn to it because I identify with the medical aspect of it. My poor dear mother came to that show and almost passed out. She had to leave the room. It was upsetting for her to watch because of what we had experienced. But I was very drawn to the kind of stories that they were telling. Especially, I love the autobiographical aspect of The Yellow Boat. I think in part, I love autobiographical writing in theater. I think it's risky and I think it's gritty. And it often is, at least shows that I've seen, I find that they're more pared down and it's people just acting their butts off. So I was really drawn to that show. So I thought, I'm going to send in a tape for this show. I didn't know anything about them. And I loved the culture that they had cultivated. I loved that they were just starting out. I loved that they were doing shows that weren't popular. Like the Just Assassins, that was the continental US premiere. That show had been performed 4 times ever, only once in the US, and it was in Hawaii. So it was the continental US premiere, the production that I was in. And I liked that they were doing niche weird shows like that they were so passionate about. So respecting what they do so much, I was stunned and delighted when they took a chance on me with Tempest. And I'm forever grateful to them for casting me and for believing in me. I think I've done some of the best acting of my life with them.
Very good. That was actually my next transition there. That they've agreed to come alongside you in your latest project, which is The Tempest, which you've been very blessed through this whole process.
It's a miraculous show.
To come across a lot of things that have really kind of just gone your way you didn't expect them to.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about that collaboration of the Little Shop coming along and partnering with you to do this show.
Yeah. I think because I'm from Seattle and this mindset of let's just get together and rent a space and do a show, I've had this mindset of, well, I could do that. I could get some friends together and rent a space and do a show. Why not? Why not? So I approached this project with I'm just going to make this happen. What I needed social media recognition. So what I had said to Anna Seat and Radar Bishop, the founders of Little Shop, I had said, hey, I'll do all the work, just post stuff on socials. And they said, done. They said, do you want money? And I said, I'm going to make it happen somehow. I'm not going to ask you for money. One of the miracles that occurred is I called the Botanic Garden at OSU and said, hey, can we use the space? And they said, how much money do you want? And I said, what do you mean? Don't I pay you? And they go, no, we have sponsors. How much money do you want us to give you? So it ended up just falling into place. Timing wise, they had a bit of a gap between Just Assassins, which closed in January, and then their next show is going to open in late June. Feathered, the world premiere of Feathered the musical, based on the myth of Icarus. So we had this space, and I pitched, this is what I want to do with Tempest, and they said, well, that sounds great, and we trust you. Let's make this happen together. And by some miracle, we've continued to make it happen.
So why the Tempest?
I love the Tempest. Tempest is one of my favorite shows. I've always wanted to direct the Tempest, and I have a personal history with it of always getting like really close to it and then just not being able to do it. And I think part of this, I could do that. I could get a group of people together and I could do that. I felt like I had the right people for the show. I felt like I had the right people in my life to make that show happen. And I had done a cabaret show with Town and Gown at the Botanic Garden. And I thought the space would be really great for it. So I thought I have the space. I have the right people for it. And my favorite genre of story is heist. I love a heist. And Tempest is this beautiful Shakespearean heist. So I thought, I have this vision for the show. I have these people and I have this place. I'm just going to ask. I'm just going to put feelers out into the universe of, if I do this, would you do it? Or can I use your space to do this? Or do you want to be part of it? And for some reason, people kept saying yes to me. So we went ahead and made it happen. I felt a very deep and relevant connection to it now. We're going for a contemporary aesthetic. I was very inspired by, I hate to say it, it sounds morbid, but I was very inspired by the Titan submarine implosion. You get a bunch of rich people in the middle of the ocean and something crazy happens. And I thought, I bet that would translate really well to now and to these characters. And I love looking for those universal things, the selfish, selfly ambitious, authoritarian, the Nepo baby, Ferdinand, who's never had to make a decision in his life, the Prospero who feels like she's lost out on something. I wanted to take, what would that look like now? What would that look like today with these characters? And it felt like the Titan event translated really well into this show being relevant now. So it felt imminent. It felt like it needed to happen. So it's happening.
That's very cool. So when is this show going on?
This show is performing for 2 days, May 30th and 31st at the Botanic Garden at OSU. They like to close before sunset. So our Saturday night show is at 5:45 and our Sunday show is at 2. Bring a lawn chair or a blanket to sit on. It's very Shakespeare in the Park. Very
Okay.
DIY Shakespeare in the Park.
And so if people want tickets, where do they find these tickets?
It's free. Just show up.
Absolutely free.
It's
That's
absolutely free.
amazing.
I mean, we'd love it if you donated. There will be a Venmo code to tip the actors, but it's absolutely free. We just want people to come watch and celebrate this show.
So what are you hoping comes out of this production?
I hope people have fun. You know, I think there's a lot of pressure around Shakespeare. You know, right? There's this, I don't know if I can replicate it, or I don't know if I understand it. We've put together such a fun show. Like my Trinculo and Stefano and Caliban, played by Bridget, and Grayson and Jonathan. Those three are just, they're funnier every single time. Jade as Ferdinand is just hilarious, and increasingly so every rehearsal. My actors are so funny, and I just want people to come out and have a good time.
Excellent.
I just want to capture the magic. I worked with an outdoor Shakespeare company. Their catchphrase was Shakespeare under the stars the way it was intended. And I love just the outdoor natural atmosphere to performance. So just come and get fully immersed in the outdoors and in the island and in the shipwreck.
Absolutely. And who doesn't love a good time? So we're coming to the end of our time here together.
All right.
Which I've thoroughly enjoyed.
Okay.
And what I like to do every time we wrap up one of our interviews, I have a set of questions that we call our curtain call curveballs.
Ooh, okay.
These
nervous.
are totally off the wall, off the
Yay.
top of your head responses. So when you hear the question, it's just the first thing that comes to your head. Can be totally stupid, or it can be very thought-provoking.
Okay.
Either way. Most times we do this and people are at the end going, I can't think of anything, because they've been thinking the whole time. But yeah, it's just, again, they're weird, they're fun, they're off the wall. It's just, we're gonna have fun with it. Okay. I always like to end on a fun note.
I'm sweating a little bit. Let's do it.
Absolutely. All right. First question, if your writing voice had a flavor, what would it taste like?
Pistachio.
Why would you say pistachio?
Pistachio is a very common flavor in one of my favorite Palestinian desserts, baklava. And I was recently in Europe, and I feel like London and Milan have really caught on to pistachio flavored coffee, and I want that to catch on more here. So I like the flavor, and I like the color. I love pistachio green. It's my favorite color.
There you go.
Yeah.
What is one smell that instantly takes you back to your childhood?
Smell of chlorine. I
Okay.
spent a lot of time at the pool as a child.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. If you can only knit one thing for the rest of your life, what is it?
I think, ooh, you know, I don't know if you've seen people who do like the 1 row a day thing. I think I would like to like start a scarf and just do 1 row a day with a color that represents my mood for the day.
Sure.
Up until I die. And then it's like a history of every day I lived up until then.
I believe that's actually a very Native American concept. They do different beads for different parts of life, and as they beat it along, they end up with a history of the people. And I think that's great. I love
I
that.
keep seeing it on Instagram.
Yeah.
Like knitting is history thing, and I like it.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. What punctuation mark best represents your personality?
Ooh, it's not a real one. It's not a real one. I'm going to say intro bang. It's the question mark exclamation point together. It's
Okay.
it's not real, but I'm going to say that one.
So you're blending.
Yeah. Yeah.
As you should. If you could instantly master one completely useless skill, what would you choose?
Oh. I mean, define useless. I've always wanted super strength. Like, can I say powerlifting, or is that not useless?
Well, it may not be useless, may be useless to somebody, but it may be useful to you. So, it could be either way.
I wouldn't mind being She-Hulk. I'll say powerlifting.
There you go. Okay. Let's see. What's the craziest thing in your car right now that you're willing to admit on a podcast?
Oh, I went to Wendy's. I had points for a free kids meal. And, it comes with a toy and a little Wonder Woman with a very not invisible jet sitting on my dashboard.
I like that. I do. I really like that.
Coming out as a Wendy's kids meal.
Sure. Kind of tagging along with what we just said, you get one superpower. What is it?
Oh, Well, I mean, in this scenario, have I already mastered powerlifting?
If you still want to stick with the powerlifting, it's your superpower.
But no. Do I get that separately though? Like, have I mastered that skill and I get a superpower?
Okay, these are two different universes. We're in the multiverse here, so two different.
Man, I'm really nosy, and I would love to read minds.
Ooh, see, that can be dangerous.
It can be dangerous.
Being very creative, but it can be dangerous.
Yeah, I'm gonna say reading minds because powerlifting can be a skill that's obtained.
That's true. If you could live inside any book for 1 week, what book are you choosing?
I'm gonna say Lord of the Rings: Return of the King, so I can marry Legolas.
Okay.
Oh, Legolas, love of my life. Not Orlando Bloom. Legolas.
The actual character.
Yes.
Okay. What's the most chaotic cosplay idea that you've never attempted?
Oh, I always wanted to do the it's Infinity Train, the conductor from Infinity Train. I don't have the engineering or mathematical prowess to pull that one off, but if I did, it would be legendary.
Okay. Hey, I've seen some very creative costumes, and I just don't understand how they do it.
I love the niche shows too. Like, you go to a comic convention and there's one person dressed as a character from Owl House, but everyone is swarming them because that's the one person from Owl House.
Yeah, it's unique. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So last question, a little bit more creative.
Okay.
If you could tell your 13-year-old self one thing, what would it be?
Oh, my 13-year-old self was going through some stuff. I think, you know, I pick anthems for the phase of life that I'm going through. And lately I've been in a very Janice Ian Mean Girls mood. And I've been listening on repeat as I go through transitions and I make decisions. I've been listening to, it's so cliche, I've been listening to I'd Rather Be Me from Mean Girls. And that musical didn't exist when I was 13. That premiered, I think, when I was in late high school, early college. So I would just hand her a pair of headphones with I'd Rather Be Me on loop and say, listen to that until it makes sense.
Does it make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
It does now.
There you go. Kat, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate this. This has been a lot of fun.
Okay.
If anyone wanted to follow you or your work or anything like that, how would they do that?
Probably Instagram. Instagram is where I'll post a lot of my feeder and writing and cosplay stuff, although it's been a hot minute since it was cosplay stuff on there. Kat.d.abdallah on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, but I don't use that as much. And I am afraid of Elon Musk, so I'm not on X or Twitter or whatever you're calling it these days.
Yeah. Okay. I will make sure to have those links in the show notes so everyone can find you. So thank you again for agreeing to do this. Yeah. I appreciate this.
Thank you so much.
Best of luck for Tempest.
Thank you.
And to all of the cast, if you're listening, which I'm sure they will be listening.
I hope so.
Best of luck for all you guys. Break a leg, and I will see you there.
Yay.
So,
and Tempest cast, if you're listening, I love you so much. I love all of you so much.
Again, many of them good friends of mine, and I love you guys as well. So for everybody else listening at home or in your car drive or at work or whatever, thank you for giving us a little bit of your time as well. If you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all of the socials, and we appreciate your support. If you'd like to help us out, find my link tree. You can support us in that aspect as well. But 100% above all else, no matter what you do, continue to support the arts.